So a little bit about me. I am a procurement executive and have cross-sector experience in consumer goods, chemicals, and medical devices. And I've led procurement teams in Fortune 100 as well as private equity-backed companies of different size and different maturity level. I'm very passionate to elevate procurement into a strategic value creation engine. And one of the topics that's very exciting to me is to build, the next level of co-leadership, right? Besides the good partnership, but it's really turn that partnership to co-leadership to drive enterprise value. So I'm very excited. I know many of you are finance leaders, so I'm very excited to share some of my learnings along the way. Next slide, please. So today we're talking about reimagining the CPO and the CFO relationship from more traditional cost control to the next level of strategic co-ownership. And we'll talk about why it is mission critical, especially in today's very disruptive and fast-pacing environment, and some of the examples about how the values are being created, as well as some of the pillars and levers for us to think about. Next slide, please. As discussed, please feel free to stop me along the way for any questions. And I'm also happy to answer questions altogether after the presentation. So let's start with the why. Why the CPO and CFO partnership is mission critical, even more so today. We are living in the current business landscape today. It is more disruptive than ever, and multiple challenges are happening simultaneously, including the global geopolitical volatility, trade policies. We are facing stubborn inflation. It has been eroding margin across various industries. We're facing very uncertain economic conditions. And we all know organic growth is harder to achieve. We are also facing expanding ESG requirement and stronger regulatory requirement. Lastly, it's a risk as well as an opportunity. Technology is disruptive now these days. It poses a lot of unknowns and new territories, as well as a lot of new opportunities for us to accelerate our ability to leverage integrated data for better decision making, as well as automate workflows to improve efficiency. So let's also ensure we partner together as technology to turn technological disruption from risk to opportunity. So I believe organizations that continue operating in silos will struggle, while those who embracing the next level of CPO and CFO co-ownership will drive significant competitive advantage by increased enterprise value as well as reduce risk exposure. Next slide, please. So let's talk about what is broken today in most organizations. And let's see some of the data I have seen. 75% of the CPOs and the CFOs report their teams operating with different objectives and KPIs. And this leads to suboptimal enterprise outcomes. Finance is focusing on EBITDA and procurement track negotiated savings. As finance leaders, many probably have seen firsthand that those procurement track savings are not really landing properly in the business EBITDA or P&L. The working capital metrics, finance procurement is focused on supply terms, and there's a better way to look at this as how we could manage working capital efficiency rather than being more limited to just look at supply terms, as well as risk management. How could finance and procurement, even in today, how to leverage integrate financial planning as well as supply planning to drive the integrated resilience. Today, finance, is looking at capital allocation, procurement focus on supplier innovation, but there's opportunity to even linking those together as seeing how we can plan strategic investment that drive the maximized enterprise value. So, as we are seeing, although there are, some partnership existing, there are still a lot of silos with fragmented KPIs, and planning process is static, and decision making become reactive. So we really want to transform that to more integrated co-leadership, and I will explain a little bit more about how we can do that. So next slide, please. So strategic co-ownership, in my view, there are 3 key pillars that we can focus on. It started with unified goals. And from shared accountability, from margin performance, value creation, cash optimization, ROIs for CapEx and OpEx, as well as ESG outcomes. Not only we need to have unified goals, we need to make sure the incentive metrics allow both functions to drive enterprise value results rather than department wins, to make sure we are breaking those silos and create unified goals. And the second pillar will be shared forecasting and scenario planning. Today, there are a lot of planning process is still very static, and just thinking about your budgeting process, right? It takes a long time to send spreadsheets, gathering data, as well. Then it rolls up, and the static process does not allow finance team to leverage the real-time market intelligence that procurement have to drive faster and better decision making. I also believe joint scenario modeling is become even more important. For example, in today's tariff environment, there are a lot of uncertainties and different scenarios could happen. So by the ability to establish joint scenario modeling and anticipate the potential disruption opportunities, and make sure procurement and planning, or procurement and finance have well coordinated response plan are even more critical these days. And last, the third pillar is one source of truth, and this really talk about the data structure. And if you build common data structure and reporting that allow one single point of truth and timely visibility, and that incorporate, right, the real-time visibility that incorporate those market intelligence, the pricing dynamics, margin involvement, volume updates, and also it impacts working capital. If we can build the one source of truth that have unified integrated data, that will really accelerate decision making and scenario planning. And I believe that is extremely critical. And this model will transform the relationship from transactional to strategic, and creating significant enterprise value while neither function can create independently. So next slide, please. So here are some 5 strategic levers, I think, for procurement leaders and finance leaders to think through and how they can unify leadership across those levers to further enable to further drive from functional initiatives to more transformative levers to drive the next level and add value creation. So those strategic levers are cost and cash. So in the finance levers, you look at the EBITDA and the working capital. In the procurement lens, we're looking at how we can negotiate better payment terms while with better leverages. And we want to look at that about how we could create stronger margin, right? Procurement may get cost savings in a raw material, but very soon those costing reduction are passed through pricing reduction, and therefore you don't really have a margin reduction, a margin improvement. So to be able to really thinking through in a margin lens and look at the end-to-end impact on cost and margin and the pricing is critical. And on the cash side, I have worked, especially in today's environment, the cost of cash is higher. So cash working capital is very important. So it requires procurement and finance to evaluate those opportunities together, right? Where you want to put strategic stock to reduce your pricing exposure, your cost exposure, or your risk exposure, and do the the next level of data-driven decision making to smartly planning for those working capital allocation to preserve cash, yet leverage those to invest in where it is most needed. And from a risk perspective, I have seen, a lot of time procurement have hedging policy in place, but it's not as well integrated with the company's short-term and long-term financial goals or the commercial pricing strategy. So I believe, by coordinated hedging policy and really link the hedging policy with the short-term and long-term business strategy and the pricing strategy is critical to safeguard margin, yet to have the next level of margin expansion. On the innovation side, a lot of times the lens of looking at innovation is what is the return of investment. And sometimes the business missing the mark on that. They would launch innovation, but did not challenge, what is the added value of innovation? How the margin, what is the contribution margin for the innovation? So I think there's a opportunity for procurement and finance to partner together to challenge and prioritize innovation in the lens of the total company financial metrics, to be a co-pilot in driving that level of prioritization when it comes to innovation investment. As well as ESG, procurement has been focusing on scope 3, finance is looking at compliance audits, as well the total cost of the ESG and how this will mean for top line and the bottom line. So I would bring, a more siloed look to look at all this holistically on how it drives brand equity and compliance first and aware and align ESG metrics. One of the examples would be when you want to invest in recycled resin, the brand, the cost would be X, and then there will be thinking through a holistic strategy on how to be able to capture commercial value, right? Either through top line growth or increased pricing to protect margin. So those dynamic business holistic thinking to capture the ESG benefit, to make sure there's a compliance. Yes, we think smartly what ESG project will generate the maximize value, balancing the business impact and environmental impact, and the investment needed is critical to drive the next ESG agenda. And from talent perspective, I think there's opportunity for procurement and finance to look at, if we want procurement and finance to collaborate further. Procurement typically much more external focused, and finance are more in financial and data focused and internal focused. So there's opportunity also to think about cross-training, right? Cross-training and strategic capability building to develop the talent pool that have this end-to-end and cross-discipline thinking to drive the agenda for the next level of collaboration and cooperation. So I believe by integrating these perspectives, organization can make more balanced decision and optimize the next and looking for opportunity to generate more value rather than isolated metrics within each function. Next slide, please. So I would like to give a couple real-life examples on how I see, the co-ownership between finance and procurement of creating the significant value creation in different companies. So the case number one is a B2B ingredients company. In this case, the company buy a lot of commodities, and the pricing, unfortunately, and the commodity has a lot of volatility, and the pricing to the customers are usually fixed for a year or semi-annually. And this really, and there's a significant lag on how fast you can pass price increase. Hence, this is really post challenges for this company for to manage, have a lot of challenges, and there's a lot of margin volatility. So in this case, the finance team and procurement team partner together to enhance, to establish, implemented a hedging policy or implement a commodity risk management policy. That is really they partner with the commercial team to enhance visibility into pricing, cost, and margin to ensure full end-to-end alignment with commercial pricing strategy. They try to delay the price increase from the suppliers while timely and with the right contract structure that they are able to pass on the price increase to the customers. Hence, they are able to keep margin more forecastable, and they are able to deliver their financial forecast matrix and continue safeguarding margins. In this case, procurement and finance work very well together and really being the co-championship in this risk management policy and partnered with commercial team. The second example I want to give is a CapEx, an indirect spend category. In this case, it's CapEx. A personal care manufacturer have a large spend on CapEx and OpEx, and there are not an integrated corporate CapEx planning process. There are fragmented process existing where they do some competitive bidding or project management for the CapEx spend, but it's missing enterprise level of governance and prioritization. In this case, the CFO and the CPO partner together and establish a finance and procurement council to govern the CapEx investment. So each investment is being reviewed based on return of investment, based on the critical importance to the business. And this initiative ensured enterprise level visibility and disciplined return of investment and business case evaluation. It led to 20% optimization of CapEx investment. The third example I want to talk about is working capital uplift. So in this case, is a consumer product company. They are able to improve working capital while strengthen inventory resilience. So, and I want to explain how this is being done. So first, the procurement and finance team looking together, right? What is the working capital needs? Where you need to achieve to meet the enterprise goals, while what are the levers we can use, and what are the things need to be reallocated. In this case, procurement is able to work with finance, leverage supply chain finance program, improved payment by 30 days, by able to offer a very competitive financing rate to their suppliers. So in the meanwhile, there are, with uncertainties with tariffs, as well as with uncertainties on the supply chain for high risk supply chain, projected supply chain risk disruption, finance and procurement agreed to reinvest some of the working capital gains into strategic inventory, because that will help hedging the raw material cost increase exposure driven by uncertainties in the tariff or trade policies, as well as the supply disruptions. So in this case, it's a double win, right? Not only there's working capital improvement, there's also a strengthening of inventory that will reduce the risk exposure on cost as well as availability. The fourth example I want to give is a contract manufacturer. They are able to achieve a 2% margin uplift by implement integrated cost to price visibility dashboard. And let me explain how this happens. In a contract manufacturing space, the cost was not the cost to BOM and to pricing, and there was not visibility there. So when you are doing the reconciliation on margin, it's always after the fact. So what CPO and the CFO partner together is turn this to more proactive and real-time, link real-time costs with pricing and margin, and enables into price quotation, and there's also a feedback loop. So this enables smarter pricing and contracting decisions, and really delaying supply costs increasing while working on justifying and executing timely customer pricing adjustment that is linked with inflation. And that lifted a 2% margin for this contract manufacturer. So as we can see in these cases, the results speaks that by finance and procurement enhance the level of partnership, you can really drive substantial business outcomes that can create sustained value creation. Next slide, please. So there are, I cannot giving a talk without talking about digital these days. I think one of the opportunities that can really speed up or can really further enable the visibility on data and allow procurement and finance to align the metrics to have the empowered data informed decision making is digital technology. These days, there are a lot of solutions that's being provided to address that. And now with the rapid adoption of AI, this is even much more accelerated. So so it will really create, so I think it's important for procurement and finance leader to look at how to invest in shared digital capabilities to create the visibility, the insights, and the agility. So, some of those, tools I think will be important to consider would be unified dashboard that will have real-time visibility to cost, price, and margin dynamics, and linked with commodity and the market insight, and bring some of the external benchmark data in. Scenario planning, as I said, is become more critical. Static planning is not enough in today's complex environment. So joint modeling and allow technology to create real-time scenario planning is extremely important to manage today's complex supply chain and internal and external environments. ESG traceability is also important to invest, to have end-to-end visibility to sustainability matrix and compliance across the supply chain. And lastly, AI-powered insights. AI these days is used a lot for predictive analysis to anticipate market shifts. So that is also something I would recommend to explore. So I do believe, digital, where we are today, smart investment in digital capabilities would really transform, the back-looking and static ability we have so far to much more forward-looking, much more predictive, much more, and with a dynamic scenario planning included. And that will enable further to collaborative and strategic decision-making with much better insights and a much better agility. Next slide, please. So I'm going to talk about, some of the steps on how can you building your action plan to further enhance the level of co-ownership. And I think the first steps with align matrix. So I would to just look at the current matrix and scoreboard you have and the KPIs, and really look at them. Are they aligned? Do they support the end business objectives? Make sure start to think about shared KPIs, and both functions should be measured on KPIs that incentivize enterprise value creation than just functional goals. The second step would be thinking about risk strategy, right? Start to co-create risk strategy. Develop integrated approach to financial and supply chain risk management, with some scenario planning as well as thinking about coordinated risk mitigation plans. And the risk can include both identify the key risk on financial exposure as well as supply chain exposure, and where are the balance of investment, cash investment versus certainty. So I would recommend, look forward, identify your key risk areas, and start having coordinated mitigation plans. And the third step is more thinking about the enablers. Now you have the metrics aligned. Now you know you need to create, you have some risks that you want to mitigate. Then how can you implement tools and have the data to allow you to make decision faster and quicker. Also, to have visibility is very important. So I would think about how to invest in shared digital platforms that can provide visibility, and then that have the data, end-to-end data linkage capabilities from cost, price, margin, and think about direct spend, right? Think about indirect spend. You think about how to allocate budget to be able to have the biggest ROIs. And then the digital platform, how you can build the digital platform that enable better data, better analytics, and better decision making. Continue to think about to build shared digital platform, because in case can be cases that procurement is invest in the technology without thinking about finance. Finance is invest technology without thinking about procurement. So to have plan those early on will really allowing the end product to better support a cohesive strategy and planning. Establish joint governance is important. So there should be some formal coordination mechanism that allows better strategic alignment forums to share, and a shared planning process, and that should be more regular than just a quarterly reconciliation, right? So a little bit more a governance is important to ensure the organizations and the teams are working together and leveraging the tools and the process to make joint decision and to support and to make joint decision. And lastly, talent is another enablers. How to, usually procurement people stay in procurement and the finance people stay in finance. I think there's opportunity for us leaders to think about how can we develop those cross-functional capabilities. I would encourage rotational programs, trainings, work sessions that allow both functions have more in-depth understanding of the other function, and continue upskilling our teams that has cross-functional exposure. Next slide. Next slide, please. So last slide is, I would like to call for action, right? The CPO and CFO partner is your untapped superpower. I would start, in our own capacity, our own team to think about, let's schedule a finance and procurement strategic alignment workshop. You may already partner well together, but there's always opportunity to bring that partnership and co-leadership to the next level. So I would encourage you to schedule a leadership, procurement and finance leadership strategic alignment workshop to think about, in today's environment, what are your biggest risks? What are your opportunities? How you identify priority for value creation. I would start to, if your planning is still static, I would really encourage to think about scenario planning. especially for your most critical categories and the most critical business unit. Because stack planning today doesn't work. It's not dynamic enough to allow the level of agility and fast decision making and the level of preparation in today's highly complex and a highly disruptive environment. Lastly, think about the digital enablement. We have the opportunity to leverage digital innovation to allow us to work smart, more efficient. But there's also a lot of solutions out there, and where to invest, how to invest. I think it requires how to design that new process, new operating model. I think that really requires procurement and finance to work together to really think about how to leverage digital and already start pilot some digital tools and digital dashboard to start integrate those metrics and integrate those process and longer term transform transform further the finance and procurement partnership. So I do believe there are still a lot of, although we have come a long way, there are still a lot of opportunities and the power of the next level of co-leadership between the CFO and the CPO. And it will become even more critical in the years to come and provide more opportunity for us as procurement and finance leader to lean on each other to create the next level of operating model evolvement, to drive the next level of value creation, risk mitigation, and especially in today's high volatile environment with strong technology disruption. So thank you all for listening, and I would welcome if there's any thoughts, questions. Would love to address them.
Yeah, I have a question. When you're developing the dashboards, do you try to develop it across all enterprises, because you've got sales, procurement, a lot of different areas, and finance as well. So sales can eat up your working capital with low margin business, and procurement can eat up your margin with not procuring things properly. Is there some particularly good KPIs you guys like to look at or try on for size? I personally like revenue per FTE and revenue per and gross margin per FTE, and I just don't see that much in companies. Is that something you've run across, and has that been successful, what you've ran across?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think those specific metrics really need to be aligned with the context of the organization. So and what I think is important is you have to make sure that it's coherent, because a lot of times, I'll give you an example. Procurement may track, here's my negotiated cost savings, but finance really wants to see how it's land into P&L, and sometimes those translation doesn't happen well. For example, procurement may negotiate an indirect spend cost, that's immediate spend. There are 20 million value creation, and finance said, I never see that. But I think early on there should be a collaboration to say, let's agree between the CMO, right, which is the functional owner, and the CPO and the CFO. Let's agree on the value creation matrix. And if it's 20 million value creation truly achieved, we'll agree which we want to reinvest in the business, which we want to reduce on budget. In this case, will be hard dollar savings. My point is that how we can bring those siloed KPI to the KPI that truly matters, but they still have enough visibility on the different initiatives so that the right resources and incentives can be provided for the projects and effort can then return to the maximized return of investment. But I haven't seen like revenue per FTE matrix being reported. Usually, people look at SG&A as a separate line. But that's a good question. But I haven't seen that KPI often recently.
Yeah, because we're all trying to go to more AI, but AI costs money, and so at some point in time, just with all the new tech, if you don't find a way to make sure your costs are at least the same, or can you increase sales to make up the difference? And if you increase sales too much, can you finance it? So I think that's kind of the thing that people got to look at. I know folks, talk to me all the time about which system should you use, but some of these systems, every department wants a new system, and all the different salespeople want to bring in something that's going to make you all this money, but you can't really do all the innovations at once, or it costs too much money.
Yeah, I think technology, IT spend is one of the most complicated spend, right? These days, there are a lot of different softwares or solutions for each functional verticals. Besides, I would say the horizontal technology that's used by across the enterprise, but there's a lot of functional vertical softwares. So how I think procurement and finance to establish some governance model, not to delay the innovation and agility, but some governance model to ensure those technology investment have a more broader or have enterprise view, and also ensure those have a return of investment is important. So I think that should pose a unique risk and opportunities for finance and procurement to work together. And also with a lot of technology disruptions, it will impact your cost structure for a lot of service space. Like, for example, the design agency will spend less money. All of that, I think how procurement can bring those market intelligence and forward looking to the finance team, to start thinking about, a little bit more forward looking incorporate that in the forecasting model. That is important too. Just another reason I think, in today's environment, procurement and finance need to work more closely together, dynamically.